All right, so really quick, the word that's in my heart that's on repeat right now is the word love. And the way that the Lord is bringing this particular word to me, I'm going to start it off with the scripture, per usual. And the scripture that I'm coming from today is going to be 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 8. Now, sometimes in these videos, I may get the scripture wrong. I'm so sorry. I'm new to this and recording, and this is not necessarily my forte. So sometimes I may mess up on a scripture. Sometimes I may get something fluster on a word or give you a Medea phrase. I will always try to give the correct scripture in the description box below. And blame my head and not my heart, and I truly apologize. But the first scripture that we're coming from is 1 Corinthians. And let me get that scripture. All right. So in this particular scripture, the Lord is saying, love is long-suffering and kind. Love is not jealous. It does not brag. Does not get puffed up. Does not behave indecently. Does not look for its own interest. Does not become provoked. It does not keep account of the injury. It does not rejoice over unrighteousness, but rejoices with truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. All right, so with this particular scripture, I've heard this scripture so many times in life. I know this particular scripture. However, I don't know if it's just my naivety, but whenever I would hear this particular scripture, I always presumed that this was God telling us how to love other people. And this is how we are to love other people. But when I meditated on this particular word that the Lord gave me, after I read this particular scripture that he gave me, then he said, go back and read it again. And I want you to apply this scripture to you. So I'm like, okay, Lord. So I go back and I read the scripture. And so the way that the Lord dealt with me was the Lord was saying, now, when you have properly applied that scripture to you and your personal life, and you get to the place that you can accomplish this scripture for you, now you are able to love someone else properly. So the Lord is saying this is the prescription for healing, for personal healing. And when you have properly applied this to yourself and can triumphantly say, I do these things for me. And when I look at this scripture, like when it says, I am long-suffering, I'm long-suffering towards me. When the word says, love is not jealous, I understand that jealousy does not benefit me. It is not good for me to be jealous, period. Not just in love, but just period. It does not brag. I am a humble person. It does not behave indecently. You don't behave indecently, not in a relationship, but just in how you carry yourself. These are attributes of a person who properly loves themselves. And it says that it does not become provoked. It does not look for its own interests. So you're not a person who's out in this world selfish and only seeking after the things that please you, interest you. You're out for your own good and you don't care about anybody else and how it impacts anybody else in this world. It says it does not keep account of the injury. And that was a huge one, because the way that the Lord broke that down, it says it does not keep account of injury. It does not keep account of injury, meaning that there are things that people have done to you that you will not let go of. And sometimes it's not that you won't let go of. Some people don't let go of it intentionally. But sometimes we just don't let go of it. We invite it to breakfast. We let it tuck us in at night. We take long walks in the park with us, with the memory of the injustices that have taken place in our life, of the people who have hurt us. And we allow those hurts and those traumas to reoccur over and over and over because we've kept a record of it and we revisit it. And whenever something goes wrong in our lives, we go back to that trauma and say, this is why. But you're still blaming it. You still have a record of it. You are still holding on to it. And the Lord is saying, to properly love yourself, you cannot keep account. You cannot keep account of injury. It does not rejoice over unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth. So you are a person who does not rejoice when you do something wicked. You rejoice and when you tell that you feel good about yourself, when you're honest, when you're truthful with other people. This is how you properly love you. This scripture is not just about loving someone else, but you have to apply the mask to yourself first. You have to properly love you first. And then it says it bears all things, meaning that it bears all of the burdens that you have in this life. You bear them for yourself. You don't run and hide. You don't kick it under a rug. You bear your burdens. You get to know your burdens. You deal with your burdens. You confront your burdens. You bear those burdens. And then it says it believes all things. So, and it hopes all things. I think that goes all together. You believe all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. So if you believe all things for yourself, you're not the kind of person to say, oh, that's not going to happen for me. Oh, that's not going to happen for me. You don't have any hope for yourself, but you expect yourself to love someone and have hope for them. You have to believe all things are possible for you. You have to hope all things are possible for you. And you have to endure until you see those things come into fruition for you. You have to believe that you are worthy. You are worthy. You bear all things. You believe all things. You hope all things. You basically, that to me is saying that you believe that you are worthy. Before you look outside at other people and look at them to say, oh, they're worthy of this. Oh, they can get that. Or they should have this. You believe those things for yourself. And then at the end it says love never fails. So once you have properly applied this scripture to yourself, and that means you are properly loving yourself, then that love will never fail you. It will never fail you. And now you are equipped, once you have applied this scripture to yourself, to be able to receive the love that God has externally waiting out in the world for you. And so the way that the Lord has brought this particular word to me is basically saying that love is under attack. We live in a society now that people hate love. And there are groups of people that are uniting together to say why marriage is no good, why love is no good, why we should be the opposite of everything that scripture says, that we should be self-seeking. What about me? What can you do for me? What about me? Instead of being what God is saying, that once we have applied that to ourselves, now it is time to apply it to others. All right. So the Lord is saying that properly apply love to ourselves first. When you fill up all of your holes, you can allow the right love in without a need for it. Rather, an acceptance of what suits who you are best. So you don't have to have a need for love. You're now looking at it from a different perspective. You are looking for what suits who you are best. You don't have any holes in you to be filled because you've already done the work to fill those holes for yourself. You don't walk around with a lack mindset saying, oh, if I get with this person, now I feel beautiful. No, you already feel beautiful because you've done the work. If I get with this person, now I will feel accepted. No, you don't need that person to feel accepted because you've already accepted yourself. I need that person to feel financially sound. No, you properly love yourself and understand that you must provide for yourself and be self-sufficient. That is a form of loving yourself. Getting up, going to work, taking care of yourself, that is a form of loving yourself. You don't need someone else to fill that hole because you understand that you were born equipped to be able to do that for yourself. Now you can take and receive the proper love from you that is not tainted. You have a more clear depiction of what love should be because you've applied it to yourself. You're very familiar with it. And now you know when someone is trying to offer you something that is not up to par. So the next thing the Lord is saying, when you love you in the right way, then you see people who approach you from a more healed perspective. So now when people try to come to you, you don't just see that person as someone who's flirting with you or someone who is attractive. You look at them from a healed perspective. And a healed perspective, now things that didn't stick out like a sore thumb, they stick out now. You can see the areas that they are not healed quickly. You can see the derivative. You can see there are things that are sticking out, the things that you notice now, like certain behaviors that people may have. You have an understanding. And to me, it's almost like the more healed that you get, the more heightened your gifts in the spirit can be. So your discernment typically will increase. And so now you will see certain behaviors that people have, and you will understand that, that behavior had a derivative. And that there can only be so many derivatives that cause that particular behavior. And if they're operating out of that derivative, then there's a multitude of places that derivative can cause this person to go or cause this person to act out. And I don't see that being suitable for my healed life or the healed life that I'm trying to live. So when I say a derivative, it could be anything. It could be, the derivative could be child abuse. The derivative could be verbal abuse. The derivative could be they experience sexual abuse, sexual trauma that has gone unhealed, that they refuse to acknowledge or recognize. And now from that derivative, it has caused other actions to come into fruition into their life. And they're acting these things out. And you understand that this action could have only come from only so many derivatives could have caused that behavior in their life. And so you begin to look at people that way. And when you do that, when you look at people from a healed perspective, then, and you see these things, you become more picky. And that's another thing that I want to say, that people that begin to do the work, that become healed, become picky people. So now people who are unhealed will only see themselves from the part of themselves that they're willing to acknowledge. So maybe they think that they're attractive. They are ignoring all the other things that are evident to a person who's healing themselves. They don't acknowledge any of their vices or their issues or their problems. They only will acknowledge the things that benefit them. But to a person who's actively working on consistently being healed, they can't ignore those other things. They see those other things, and they know that those other things stand to be an issue or cause a problem down the line. So that person will now feel like if you say, no, thank you, that they're being rejected. Like, oh, the one thing about me that I know that's good, you're rejecting it. No, I'm not rejecting that. Yeah, you're attractive. You are attractive. I'm rejecting the things that I see are unhealed in you and that you refuse to acknowledge. And now they have festered and fermented to the point that now you're doing that. And now you're doing that. And now you're doing that. And all of those things let me know that that trauma has been unhealed for a long time, because it started off as this and now it has turned into that. Things can go from one thing, traumas can go from one issue, and they can ferment and become something way worse than what